It's next on the St. Paul Forum. Hello and welcome to another edition of the St. Paul Forum. I'm Mike Wassenaar. In early August, the St. Paul Public Libraries got a new director, and it's someone who's not unfamiliar with the Twin Cities or with libraries. Kit Hadley had been the director of the Minneapolis Public Libraries for many years, and she now joins the St. Paul Public Libraries, an institution that is much loved in St. Paul and that faces many challenges as we look at the future of information, community education, and the life of libraries in our community. We'll talk about that and much more over this next half hour with Kit Hadley, who joins us here on this edition of the St. Paul Forum. Kit, thank you for joining us here at SPNN, and welcome to this side of the river and to St. Paul.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. I'm very excited about it.
Now, you'd gone away from libraries for a while. You had actually led the Minneapolis Public Libraries for a number of years and then went through a merger process with the Hennepin County Libraries and stepped away from the library game, and yet you come back now to St. Paul. Why is that?
You're right. I had worked very hard at Minneapolis to deal with some extremely big challenges around kind of the financial future for libraries, and the conclusion really was that the best alternative was merging with the Hennepin County Library, and so I assumed that would just be the end of my library career. I am not a librarian. And most libraries still require that the library director have their library degree. Mm-hmm. So I assumed that that would be the end of libraries and for me in terms of my work life. And St. Paul, when they were looking for a new director, decided to expand the search to people who had other kinds of experience. And I was I'm excited about the possibility of applying and getting back into the world of libraries. It really got under my skin. I'm extremely energized and excited about the challenges facing public libraries.
Well, let me ask you a little bit about what gets under your skin with a library, because most people don't necessarily see libraries as the place where the sort of snap, crackle, and pop occurs in the world. But there's something exhilarating for you about working with libraries and with the work that they do in the community?
Very much so. For me, it's really about the intersection of a bunch of worlds that seem very important to me. So there's this whole sphere of learning and literacy and education and the extent to which libraries are a part of the informal learning sector in any community, and is that a vigorous sector or not? There's the whole sphere around democracy, if you will, and civic engagement, and the enormous power of free access to information, and the historic role that libraries have always played and continue to play in that world. And then essentially this world around our public places and the role they play in terms of social cohesion in our communities, the livability of neighborhoods. We need civic spaces. We can't just have commercial spaces. And libraries have always been very powerful in terms of how multi-generational they are. They've been unique in that way. So what is the potential for library spaces to really promote the vitality of a community? It feels to me like libraries are at the intersection of all these very important spheres in our society.
Now, I know as we're talking here, you're just getting your sea legs as you're coming to the institution. But are there any differences that you see immediately coming from one city to another, just in terms of the relationship that the community has with its libraries? I'm curious about that.
I think the major difference flows from the way Minneapolis and St. Paul government is structured differently. That really, I really feel a difference.
So part of that's the way in which budgeting works within the city, and the way in which the separate control of government through ward and mayors, council members and mayor's offices are different between the two cities, right?
Yes, and even more important, I think, in Minneapolis, decision-making is very, very decentralized. And so this issue about who owns what and who feels responsible for what is very unclear. And there's a very palpable sense here in St. Paul about people kind of loving and owning the library system. Doesn't mean there aren't hard issues, doesn't mean there aren't big disagreements, but it feels very different than it did in Minneapolis.
Well, part of that, I think, is also some of the legacy you have from leaders who have worked with the libraries over the course of the last, it actually goes back decades in some instances, in terms of the vision for libraries playing a life in the civic sector in St. Paul. You see that with the development of the Rondo Community Library, and even the partnership with Dayton's Bluff Library and Metro State. If these sort of partnership projects are very much interested in sort of the broader life in the community outside the four walls of the library.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I have used the phrase that it feels to me like community engagement, community outreach, community connection is very much in the DNA in St. Paul.
So your predecessor, Melanie Huggins, came from a youth education background, and that was sort of a passion that she had as she was thinking about programs that were being developed and reaching out to the community in terms of her vision for programs. Is there a specific passion that you have as a director? You talked a little bit about civic space and the civic traditions that excite you.
And I would say I'm very passionate about the literacy issues. So early literacy, all kids graduating from high school and getting some post-secondary, media, information, tech literacy being widespread and sophisticated among the population. These, I think the library has a role in driving. And how we do that, how we do it best with partners, is something that very much engages me.
So one of the other things that's different about St. Paul from Minneapolis, and actually probably from many other library systems, is the role of the Friends organization. It seems to me that that's a significant asset that you have as you're working with this, as a vibrant nonprofit fundraising arm that actually has thousands of connections in the community that are seeking to bring assets into the library to help it develop and grow and be strong. That's got to make you feel good in your early days in the job.
Oh, it's just a huge asset. And, I got to know Peter Pearson, who's the head of the Friends of St. Paul, when I was at Minneapolis. The Minneapolis Friends were incredibly important in Minneapolis, and they were just an amazing organization in terms of the capital campaign for the new Central Library, in terms of this explosion of programming, cultural programming, some literacy program, and Colin Hamilton, the head of the Friends in Minneapolis, and I were just had an extremely close working relationship, and I look forward to having that working relationship with Peter. And Peter has really been an amazing leader in this area, in the library world around the country. And to think that I get to work with Peter in this job is just a treat.